the recording then, Mark, and then again, if we can have a mover and a seconder, so that's it for Councillor Baldwin to go into the chair, and we can it's all as recorded for posterity then, as it were.
Yeah, we've got to
move Andrew.
Yeah, I second that, Andrew.
The seconder is Councillor Paul Davis, is it?
Yeah.
Can I therefore
Thank you, Councillor Granville. Thank you, Councillor Paul Davis. Andrew, if you could now read the declaration that in relation to this meeting is being recorded and being conducted virtually. I should know most of it off by heart, but unfortunately I don't have the pointers here in front of me to do it. So Andrew, if you could read that declaration.
Yes, that's no problem at all, Councillor Baldwin. Thank you all for attending today. Can I welcome all members and officers to this meeting of the Town and Community Council Forum, which, due to government advice to practice social distancing, will be held virtually. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as practicable following the meeting. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing the meeting from remote locations. Please could everybody ensure that mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda, and the chairperson will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their cameras on at that point, and with the exception of the chairperson, at all other times, you should keep your cameras and microphones switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise and interference and to ensure the connection remains as stable as possible. If any members and officers wish to raise a point or question, they should press the hands up icon on the screen at the top right hand of the Microsoft Teams window, and the chairperson will then come to you in the order he receives the requests. Please lower your hand once you have finished speaking. The chat function has been disabled for this meeting. Please do not use your microphone until the chairperson has invited you to do so. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and where necessary will mute those not being used. Before we formally commence, my colleague Mark Galvin from Democratic Services will announce the names of the councillors in attendance at this meeting, and officers should also introduce themselves as and when they are invited to speak during the course of the meeting. They too should ensure microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use. I have just realised that I did not introduce myself at the beginning, so for the record, my name is Andrew Rees, Democratic Services Officer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Mark, can you introduce the councillors that are present then, please?
Certainly, Chair. I'm Mark Galvin, Interim Democratic Services Manager. Members today are Councillor Kerry Reeves, Councillor Sherry Jones, Councillor Ken Watts, Councillor Mary Hughes, Councillor Paul Davis, Councillor Richard Granville, Councillor Richard Young, Councillor Stuart Baldwin, Chair at this time, Councillor Jonathan Pratt, David Evans, Councillor David Unwin, Councillor Gary Chappell, Councillor Heidi Bennett, Councillor McLagan, Chair. Councillor Tracy Liddon, Councillor Tom Gifford. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Is there anybody that's present that hasn't had their name called out? Otherwise, we will move on to agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence that are registered with you, Mark or Andrew, or anybody from the floor that would like to raise apologies?
Councillor Steve Smith, Chair. Mike Pittman organised this meeting and sent out the agenda, and he's on leave this week. He may have had apologies sent to his email address, but we'll pick these up after the meeting and incorporate them in the minutes, if that's okay with you, Chair.
That's fine, thank you. Anybody from the floor at all that has any apologies?
Chair, can I say that the clerk to the Canelli Community Council, Donna Evans, gives her apologies.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Granville. Anybody else? No? Okay. Agenda item number 2 then. Any declarations of interest in relation to this agenda, to the agenda today for this meeting? Okay, no declarations of interest. If anybody identifies any declarations as part of the meeting, then of course notify us, and the Democratic Services staff will make sure that the appropriate paperwork is sent out to you. Agenda item number 3 then is for the approval of minutes. Can I have 2 people that were present to approve and second those minutes, please?
I'll formally move, Chair.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder?
I'll second Councillor Jonathan Pratt.
Thank you, Councillor Jonathan Pratt. All in favour?
Aye.
I'll take that as, yeah, as
Aye.
a yes. Okay, thank you. The next agenda item then is Shaping Bridgend's Future, and I will bring in Nicola Bunston then, who I believe is leading on that. Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you, Councillor Baldwin. I am going to introduce Joe Norman as well from Finance as part of this agenda item, who's going to give a short presentation kind of in the middle of my update when we get to the relevant section. So I'm here today to talk to you about Shaping Bridgend's Future, the budget consultation for 2021, and engagement with town and community councils. So the purpose of this report is to inform the Town and Community Council Forum of Shaping Bridgend's Future consultation process, and the aim is to ensure effective engagement with town and community councils and local residents. So you'll be aware that over the last few years we've engaged with town and community councils, and we've engaged really well, both face-to-face and online. So we're looking really to extend that today and make sure that as we go live today with the consultation, we give you kind of early warning that we are looking to carry on with that engagement for 2021. So this report links to the 3 corporate wellbeing objectives of supporting a sustainable economy, helping people and communities to be more healthy and resilient, and smarter use of resources. So just to give you a bit of background, this report will be given to you today in conjunction with the report and a presentation on the MTFS 2021 to 22 to 2023 to 24. Which will outline the scene for future years, savings requirements and budget pressures. So before I go on to the rest of the stuff about engagement and the consultation, I'm going to ask Jo if she's happy to share her screen and give the quick presentation from Finance.
Thank you, Nicola. As I just pull up the presentation on the screen, so hopefully we can all see that. So I'll start the presentation. As Nicola said, I'm Joanne Norman from the Group Manager within Finance. I hope the presentation is up and running now for you all to see. As Nicola said, the presentation is an update on the medium-term financial strategy and will set the scene for future saving requirements and budget pressures. The presentation will specifically cover the latest revenue projections for 21-22, the financial impact of COVID, and the MTFS 22-23 to 25-26. The budget projections are reviewed regularly and reported to Cabinet on a quarterly basis. And you will see on the screen the Q1 projections that were reported to Cabinet on the 20th of July this year. At Q1, the projected overspend was 904,000 on Directorate budgets, with a projected break-even position on council-wide budgets. The Q2 projections are due to be reported to Cabinet on the 19th of October. COVID-19, the financial impact, it's obviously had an inevitable impact on the Council's financial position in a number of ways. So we faced additional cost pressures. Some of these will be one-off, but some of them will be recurrent. We've got PPE, ICT costs for home working, voids in care homes. Similarly, with lost income, again, some will be one-off losses, others will be deferred losses, for example, planning income. and others we face could be more permanent losses. The main areas that we've seen being affected over the course of the pandemic are car parking, school meals and planning fees. Another potential impact are the current year MTFS savings. So for 21-22, we have 1.76 million of savings, which might not be achieved, whether that's due to delay in staffing restructures, remodelling of services, or as previously mentioned, income generation that hasn't been achieved. Conversely, there might be some areas of service where provision has reduced or stopped, and actually subsequent savings have been made. Say, for example, mileage savings from reduced physical meetings as officers continue to work from home. And finally, council tax. There is still a potential shortfall in council tax collection, especially now as we catch up on court sessions. We see the impact of the end of the furlough scheme, and we are seeing an increase in council tax benefits. The authority has continued to claim from the Welsh Government Hardship Fund in 21-22, and this table shows the value of the claims to Q1. You will see that the largest areas being supported this year are homelessness and adult social services, with 1.2 million having been claimed in homelessness and 1.1 in adult social services. The fund is being extended to March 2022, but there is a tapering of the support being provided. Moving on to the MTFS 22-23 to 25-26. The MTFS report to Council in February set out 3 scenarios for saving requirements over the next 3 years. And as you'll see, the most likely scenario in the middle set out required savings of just over 20 million. The table on the presentation now sets out how the level of savings required are impacted by the different levels of funding we could receive from Welsh Government, the AEF funding, and different levels of council tax increases. So the higher the council tax increase, or the higher the AEF that we receive from Welsh Government, the lower the budget cuts would be required. And I have a more detailed example on the following slide. So the example shown here indicates that if we did receive an increase in funding of 2% from Welsh Government, then the table sets out the following savings targets for different levels of council tax increase. As you can see, with a 2% increase from Welsh Government and a 1% council tax increase, the savings target for the council would be 4.789 million. Then that would reduce if the council tax increase went up to 4%, the savings target would be 2.186 million. As well as the budget received from Welsh Government and the level of council tax, there are pressures faced by the council that also need to be taken into account as part of the medium-term financial strategy. And the most significant of those are on the slide. So the longer-term impact of COVID-19 as we enter the recovery phase and we have the uncertainty of funding levels. As indicated earlier, we are seeing the tapering of the Welsh Government Hardship Fund for the final 6 months of this financial year. The potential impact of Brexit on costs and prices, staffing costs and additional pressure, so an increase in the national living wage, the real living wage, and unknown pay awards. Inflationary pressures. We're seeing CPI currently at 3.2%, but is rising rapidly. And who knows if this will be sustained post-COVID and Brexit. And finally, ongoing demographic pressures faced by the council. And finally, as well as the pressures we already know about, there are other priorities we will need to consider when we set the budget and the MTFS going forward. Most of these you will be aware of, but the list is not exhaustive on the screen, but it does include potential priorities for business and the economy, homelessness, health and well-being, the digitalisation agenda, decarbonisation, and as already discussed in the presentation, council tax levels. So I hope the presentation has set the scene for potential future saving requirements and the budget pressures and priorities faced by the council. And I'll now hand back to Nicola for the remainder of the report.
Thank you, Jo. It may be worth carrying on with the rest of the presentation around the engagement with budget consultation, and then we can both answer any questions at the end that anyone has, if that's okay, Chair, or would you rather?
No, I think we'll get you both. We'll let you finish both your presentations before.
Okay, so thank you, Jo. So as you all know, each year the Council carry out consultation with the public around the MTFS proposals for the following year. And in 2018, we felt really proud that we had engaged with over 5,000 residents in that consultation process through a variety of mechanisms such as face-to-face engagement, online and paper surveys, social media interactions, and the Council's Citizens Panel. And in 2019, we increased that engagement to nearly 7,500 interactions. However, we recognised then that in 2020, due to the impact of COVID-19, where we were unable to carry out face-to-face engagement, we did see a decrease in those interactions. And in 2020, we saw just over 1,800 interactions from a combination of survey completions, engagement at various meetings, social media and digital communication engagement, and via the authority's Citizens Panel. So as you all know, we always aim to ensure that the consultation is as wide-reaching as possible, and we're continuously looking for ways to engage with the public and improve participation with the public. So we hope that given the success of the engagement sessions with town and community councils, which were face-to-face in 2019 and then online in 2020, we hope to be able to replicate this for 2021 by attending any of your face-to-face or online meetings as appropriate. So going down to section 4 of the report, the time frame this year for Shaping Bridgend's future consultation is the 20th of September today, so the consultation has gone live this afternoon and will run until the 14th of November 2021. So we're able to engage over that period with as many people in the community as we can. And the areas that we will focus on this year in that consultation are performance over the last 12 months, support for business, tourism and the economy, well-being, customer face-to-face access, digitalisation, investment in services, fees and charges, council tax levels, and the future. So we will be sending out town and community councils the electronic link to the consultation. We'll also tomorrow be sending out posters and business cards to all town and community councils through the post. And paper copies of the consultation are available where requested, so they can be requested directly through me or the consultation email address. Consultation will be available in a variety of formats, including online and paper, and we will have a standard, an easy read, a youth and a large print consultation available on our website and available in paper copies. All formats are available in Welsh and English. So during the live period, we hope to attend town and community council meetings and the consultation engagement team, which at the moment is pretty much just me, will liaise with the town and community council clerks directly to arrange attendance at those meetings. We will be developing a calendar of events for the live period, so ask if you do have meetings coming up in that live period, you do get in there as quick as you can. We did have quite a few clashes last year and the year before, which is easier now that we're running some of those meetings online to get from one meeting to the other quickly. but just be aware that, you know, the evenings in particular do fill up. So if you want us to attend your events, please let us know as soon as possible. The budget consultation report will be presented to Cabinet in December 2021, and then next steps will be decided in relation to the MTFS strategy going forward. So the recommendation for this report is that the Town and Community Council Forum receives and considers this report and the presentation that you've received from Joe, and gives consideration to engagement during the live period. And that's everything for me, Chair, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Joe. Nick, and thank you, Joe. The leader is now in the meeting, so I'm going to rescind my chair to the actual chair and allow him to take over from here on. Thank you.
Thanks so much for chairing the meeting in my absence, Councillor Baldwin. Much appreciated, and apologies to everyone for the lateness technical problems, but I'm with you now. And thanks so much to Nicola and Joe for that comprehensive presentation. I can see that Councillor Bennett would like to ask a question. So Councillor Bennett, please.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies I can't turn my camera on. I'm actually on my phone at the moment. I just wanted to be clear, as town and community councils are being asked to take on more activity and more work as a result of reducing BCBC budgets, I wanted to understand the language being used in finance. You referenced savings. I wanted to be clear, are these bankable savings or are we actually referring to cuts? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Bennett. Joe, please, do you want to answer that question?
No problem, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Bennett, for your question. The savings that will be developed over the course of the MTFS will be through a variety of approaches. It could be through increased income generation. It could be through alternative methods of service delivery. So I know you mentioned specifically cuts. The budgets will be reduced, but that the first port of call for an MTFS saving is via the smarter use of resources. So the process of the MTFS will be to reduce the budgets by the value determined, but there's various opportunities as to how those will be achieved.
Thank you, Joe. And I think it is important to recognise, whilst we'll always strive to maximise the level of efficiency savings, after over £60 million worth of savings being made and years of austerity, that has become increasingly difficult to ensure that as much as the savings as possible are exactly that. So it's likely in the future that a bigger share of those budget savings will actually be cuts. Though of course we will continue to work as hard as we can to reduce the share of cuts and maximise savings. And good examples would be, wouldn't they, Joe, is reduction in office accommodation costs as we continue to rationalise our estate and have rationalised it significantly already. Energy efficiency savings, for example, too, which are good, also good for the environment. Thanks for that question and point, Councillor Bennett. It is a good one. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? I'm just looking to see in the chat function and list of participants. I can't see that anyone else currently has their hand raised to indicate that they wanted to come in. So I should say, as clearly, that the presentation was very comprehensive, because we don't seem to have any more questions. And I know that County Borough members will certainly have had other opportunities and will have other opportunities to ask questions. I just emphasise that you've got contact details there for Nick, and they're very happy to answer any questions that you have outside of this
meeting, and we really do hope that as many members as possible participate in the consultation and engagement process, because it is a very important part of the budget setting process, the medium-term financial strategy, and it is part of the decision-making process for the authority. Okay, well, I can't see that that anyone else does want to come in, so it just remains for me to well, actually, before I thank the officers, we do have some recommendation just for the minutes. We'll need someone to move and second those recommendations, please.
I'll formally move, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Granville, and I can hear a seconder as well. So thank you both for your attendance at the meeting, and we will now move on to the next report on today's agenda, which is a planning update on the Local Development Plan, National Planning Policy and Placemaking, and it's a report from our Group Manager for Planning and Development Services. So over to you, please, Jonathan.
Thank you, Leader. My name is Jonathan Parsons, Group Manager for Planning and Development Services, for the purposes of the recording. I'm now going to attempt to share the presentation with you members. It's quite a few slides, but it shouldn't take too long. So we are covering quite a complex subject at the moment. So hopefully you can all see that. Does that presentation come up at all?
Not yet, Jonathan, but perhaps there's a slight delay.
Okay.
I can see you very clearly, but I can't see a presentation yet.
All right, I shall. Okay. Right, is this some? Can you see that now?
We can see it now. I don't know if it's possible to make it a little larger. Would that be possible, do you think? Oh, even better. There we go.
Is that better?
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
It's much better. Thank you, Jonathan.
That's okay, Leader. Thank you very much. Apologise for that. Never seem to get this aspect of the presentation right, but please bear with me. Okay, this afternoon we're looking at a planning update for members. It's covering three main topics. One is the local development plan review. The second one is Future Wales 2040 and Planning Policy Wales 11. These are national planning policy documents that were published earlier this year by Welsh Government. And we're also going to touch on the subject of placemaking. So it's three quite sort of hefty subject areas. If we can, if it's okay by you, Leader, if we can leave questions until the end, and I'll be quite happy to answer questions from members. Okay, let's start with the LDP. The Local Development Plan, the LDP is statutory. It's at a high level strategy that must be prepared by the council. It's a statutory requirement, and it sets out in land use terms the priorities and objectives of the council. The current LDP, which is adopted in 2013, is due to expire this year, and the preparation of the replacement plan is well underway. And the plan is at a critical stage, and the council has published the replacement LDP deposit draft, and that's been through a public consultation, 8-week consultation over the summer. So consultation is closed at the moment. As part of the consultation, all community councils were notified, and there were some engagement events specifically for community councils that were carried out by Planning Aid Wales. It was an independent organisation, and they were commissioned by the council to carry out that particular engagement. The deposit draft plan builds upon the preferred strategy, which was previously consulted on a couple of years ago now, back in 2019, and the purpose of the deposit draft consultation is to seek views of all the communities affected by the LDP and move on to the next stage of the LDP process. Amendments to the deposit draft can be made after the public consultation, but we need to report that to council, and then the next stage then would be to submit the plan for an independent examination in public. So it's like a public inquiry, and that will be determined by a planning inspector and the Welsh ministers. Once finalised and adopted, the replacement LDP will replace the existing plan, and then will become the statutory development plan for the county borough up to 2033. The deposit draft consists of a written statement. It outlines planning policies, the land use allocations, and the associated justification based on the supporting evidence. The proposals map, which is part of the deposit draft, so illustrates the land use allocation, settlement boundaries in map form, in plan form. And there are also a large number of supporting technical documents that have been produced to inform the process of the replacement LDP. So the evidence base, which is quite critical, that needs to be read alongside the deposit draft. But some of these reports are quite lengthy, they're quite technical, and we've sought to summarise them as much as possible. And when you see the policies in the plan document, they're based on the evidence that has been accumulated over the last couple of years. The LDP vision is set out in the draft plan and will deliver through 4 strategic objections, and these seek to reflect national planning policy and legislation, and will address the issues facing the county borough. So the 4 strategic objectives are as follows: create high quality sustainable places. That's linked into placemaking, which we will come on to later. To create active, healthy, cohesive and social communities, to create productive and enterprising places, and to protect and enhance distinctive and natural places. So these are the 4 main strategic objections that you will see running through the plan. In order to achieve these visions and objectives, the council will follow a regeneration and sustainable growth strategy. And that this will provide the framework to implement the regeneration priorities of the council, whilst also providing sustainable growth towards existing settlements, or directing sustainable growth towards existing settlements that will demonstrate strong employment, service and sustainable transportation functions. To enable the implementation of the growth and spatial strategy, a number of strategic allocations where growth will be focused are identified, and these will direct growth to regeneration sites, and sustainable urban extensions will be identified within the regeneration growth areas. The public consultation deposit draft provided all members of the community, of our communities and key stakeholders the opportunity to provide their opinion. And officers will now review all the representations that have been submitted, which are approximately 1,200 individual submissions, which is a lot more than the previous LDP. And the consultation report then will consider whether any changes need to be made to the deposit plan. The supporting evidence base will also be reviewed to make sure that's up to date and to determine if any updates are required. And the council will then need to prepare a new delivery agreement with the Welsh Government to set out an appropriate timescale towards formal adoption of the LDP. So once we've produced the consultation report, then we then have to review the plan see if it needs any updates, and then we have to go back to Welsh Government with a revised delivery agreement, and that's the formal agreement between the Council and Welsh Government on how the plan is going to be delivered. So that's as much as I can say on the LDP. So I'm quite happy to take questions on that at the end of the presentation. But what I'll do, I'll move on now to the National Planning Policy position, and this is the publication of Future Wales 2040, which is the national plan, and Planning Policy Wales 11, which is the main planning policy document for planning in Wales. You can see there's pictures there of the two different plans. No pictures of Bridgend, unfortunately. There's a nice picture of Swansea and a picture of Pontypridd. But the principle behind these documents are that they provide the fundamental overarching national planning policy that we have to have regard to. So it's a statutory requirement. So Future Wales was known as the National Development Framework, and it's a national land use development plan for Wales. It's the first of its kind. It replaces the Wales Spatial Plan and sets out Welsh Government's spatial vision for development up to 2040. And this is achieved through a number of policies, and it outlines where we should be investing in infrastructure and development for the greater good of Wales and its people. So it's a national development plan. Future Wales is linked to the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, and it demands that all development and use of land contribute to improving the economic, social, environmental and cultural well-being of Wales. It is a framework which we built on by strategic development plans at a regional level and local development plans, or LDPs, at a local level. And of these plans must be in conformity with Future Wales. So at the local level, we've got the LDP, which I've just talked about, but there will be another plan between Future Wales and the LDP, and that's the strategic development plan, and that will be produced on a regional basis. Also, development control decisions must consider Future Wales as the development plan. So it's relevant to making a planning decision. Significant national planning policy. It's together with Planning Policy Wales. It, as I said before, provides a sort of national planning policy framework. It has 36 policies, and they are split 50-50 nationally and regionally. There's a strong emphasis on regional planning through SDPs, or strategic development plans. More weight added to strategic placemaking through Planning Policy Wales. And is seen by Welsh Government as it's a watershed. It's the first national scale development plan, and will be key to delivering other Welsh planning strategies. So it's if you do attend any Welsh Government briefings or regional briefings, you will see that whenever they mention strategies, the Future Wales is always mentioned. It's always part of that strategy. So there's a quick diagram there showing the spatial strategy, which shows where the growth areas are, where the connectivity is, where the infrastructure is, and if you'll notice in the southeast Wales, there's a sort of diagonal hatching that covers Bridgend, and that indicates a national growth area. That's the 4 regions in a little bit more detail. And as I mentioned before, Bridgend part of the southeast region. Well, quite a key position that we're also bounded to the west, to the southwest region, and close links that inevitably will be with that particular region as well. But for purposes of the planning guidance, we are part of the southeast region. The Welsh Government supports sustainable growth in all parts of Wales, but has identified 3 national growth areas, and there will be expected to be growth in employment, housing opportunities and investment in infrastructure. So those areas are Cardiff, Newport and the Valleys, Swansea Bay and Llanelli, Wrexham and Deeside. And Bridgend is identified as a strategically important location within the region. A number of other towns are as well. And Bridgend is also part of the South East Wales, Cardiff, Newport and Valleys, and identified as a national growth area. So there's a little snapshot there of the South East region, giving some statistics. And all these diagrams are taken from National Planning, Future Wales and National Planning Policy Wales. So moving on then to placemaking, and quite a topical subject at the moment, and it's something that's gathering a lot of momentum. Interestingly, we had placemaking policies in our current plan, which was adopted in 2013, and we were quite advanced in that respect in trying to achieve early achievement of placemaking principles through our development plan policies, and these have been continued through into the replacement plan. So what is placemaking? It's the way places are planned, designed, developed and managed, and has the potential to positively shape where and how people will live, work, socialise, move about and engage. So that's the long definition of it. Placemaking is about ensuring that each new development contributes positively to creating and enhancing environments in which people live. Communities, businesses and nature then can thrive. So a nice diagram there of an area that is it's not in Bridgend, but it's supposed to illustrate an area where new development, it contains open space, it contains biodiversity, and it's a move away from the development we've seen perhaps over previous 40 years, which is high density development located outside of towns. So if you look at the next diagram, you'll see what I mean by that. And it's a sort of antithesis of placelessness within the built environment, where new development lacks a distinct identity, character, sense of community. So it's trying to move away from these developments which have prevailed for quite a while in Wales and in the UK in general. Placemaking puts people at the heart of the design and development process. So there's a big emphasis on consultation, and it's the idea to create places that are vibrant, with clear identity, and where people can develop a sense of belonging. National planning policy, as I mentioned previously, Planning Policy Wales, suggests a holistic approach if needed, take into consideration whole places rather than sort of smaller individual land uses or each development taken in isolation. So what we're looking at here is master planning our communities going forward. And placemaking has grown importance as a link with health and well-being has been more explicitly explored and understood, more so over the last sort of 18 months, 2 years with the COVID pandemic and the importance of having access to healthy spaces, healthy places, and areas even within your own neighbourhood and your own homes, possibly, where you can socialise and actually work from home if necessary. So it's taking all these considerations into account. So the short sort of definition then of placemaking, it's about doing things better, creating vibrant, sustainable, good quality communities and improving the overall standard of design with people at the heart of the process. It's quite a big ask given the type of development we've been used to for quite a long period of time, but this is what we've now got to aim for. As the local planning authority in Bridgend, we are in the best position to control and improve development and make the necessary interventions for the benefit of all. So it's putting planning more at the sort of core of placemaking decisions, and as I mentioned previously, linked in with a lot of other policies and strategies that the authority has as well in terms of well-being and looking after our communities. So how can we achieve this? Well, pardon me, the main tool that we will have in bringing this forward, as well as the national planning policy, is the local development plan. And that will contain policies that will support placemaking, but it'll also bring forward strategic development sites that are well located and connected. So that's the key part of this. Is our future development has to be well connected to the to communities. We can't have isolated communities. You can't have communities where you can't get to it unless you drive. It's got to be well connected. Big emphasis on active travel, big emphasis on public transportation, and having a mix of uses within the developments to perhaps cut down on the need to travel. So we need sound master planning for strategic sites, and that will be built into the LDP and the sites that come forward. And we need to ensure that there's provision of adequate education facilities, open space, and active travel routes. So we're looking at the concept here of 20-minute neighbourhoods, which is something that you can, from your home, you can get within 20 minutes. You can get to all the basic amenities and needs. Development control system then form the basis for influencing development at local level by challenging developers and seeking improvements and added quality through incremental changes. So once we've got our big strategic sites coming through the development plan, we can still make a difference at a local, smaller level through our day-to-day development control decisions. So there is a health warning with placemaking, as there is with everything, and It's placemaking not all things to all people. Every decision needs to be made on sound planning grounds. So some people may not be particularly happy with the development. It can't be refused, only be refused on sound planning grounds. So that still applies. But what we would seek to achieve is getting improvements in that development to ensure that concepts of placemaking have been taken into consideration. Placemaking isn't a new concept. It's been around for centuries, and you can look at, if you look at the pattern of developments that have grown up through the UK and even in the local area, you can see how it's over the last couple of hundred years. You can see how of communities have changed. But in a sort of Victorian era, there was less emphasis on travel. Perhaps there were some more quality mixed-use environments. Quite possibly there was a lot of squalor as well. There was a lot of heavy industry and a lot of health issues. But what we believe that we've now in the 21st century, we have got the ability and the technology and the experience to sort of move away from the developments that have built up over the last 50 years, and that was very much car dependent, built around cars and access and roads. Planning has been managing and reconciling land use formally since 1947, the Town and Country Planning Act, first major Town and Country Planning Act, and that's evolved over the passage of time, but it's still fundamentally it's the same principles that apply. But over the last sort of 35-40 years, there has been less focus on quality and people, and when I started my career in planning, there was at that cusp of that change where there was a move away from a quality of environments to actually just pushing development forward and pushing the economic benefits over the social benefits. But this change now is quite positive to sort of work on bringing forward better quality development. So it is a major change to the way we work. And it's not going to happen overnight. This change isn't going to happen overnight, but it's only with the emergence of our strategic sites that we really see true placemaking in action, and it is quite aspirational. But we can still focus on smaller scale decisions at a local level and try and fit those principles into our day-to-day decisions as well. In the meantime, we are actively persuading developers to improve quality, and it can be quite challenging because major developers have a way of working that they've been used to, and everything is costed and controlled. And by asking to make changes to developments and to layouts, it can impact the viability of some sites. If we want to put more trees in, more landscape in, more better quality open spaces, active travel links, that is going to have an impact. But we do have the national planning policy backing for improved placemaking. But with everything, a lot depends on the planning appeal process, because everything is challengeable, and ultimately with the courts, because that's where decisions will end up eventually. So there's some challenges ahead, but we are trying to make a difference. So the local planning authority and the planning team are willing, ready, and able to be the placemaking champions for the council. We've got the staff, we've got the experience, we've got the commitment, and we've got the enthusiasm. We now have considerable national planning policy backing, as I mentioned before, and placemaking and planning is seen as being crucial to post-COVID recovery, and certainly with the decarbonisation agenda and biodiversity duty. So it covers all these key strategies as well. And placemaking agenda aligns with, as I mentioned, key council strategies. There's decarbonisation. There's some reading if members are minded to for placemaking, which puts a lot of emphasis on the value of planning. So these are freely available online, and it's some quite good reading in there. It does sort of emphasise the importance of the planning system, or they do emphasise the importance of the planning system in being the instrumental in bringing forward placemaking. It's not going to come from anywhere else. And we also have the Placemaking Charter Wales, which is it's been set up, well, it's over a year ago now, and it was set up by, or launched by Julie James, who was the Minister for Housing and Local Government at the time. She's now got a bigger portfolio, it includes climate change as well. And it was launched at the Plan Alive conference last year. The Charter has been developed in collaboration with the Placemaking Wales Partnership, made up of different stakeholders, and represents a wide range of interests in the built and natural environments. Design Commission of Wales is quite instrumental in bringing this forward. The aim of the Charter is to strengthen the focus on placemaking in policy and practice in Wales, and it outlines placemaking principles. The main ones are people and community, movement, public realm, location, mix of uses, and identity. And if any organisation signs up to the Charter, they pledge and then to involve local community in development proposals, using sustainable locations for new development, prioritising walking, cycling and public transport, and creating well-defined, safe, welcoming streets and public spaces, and also promoting a sustainable mix of uses, make places vibrant, and to value and respect positive, distinctive qualities and identity of existing places. So what we're looking at is creating better environments, better places, building back better. Organisations, and that includes this council, the Bridgend County Borough Councillors and Town and Community Councillors, may sign up to the Charter, and some already have done so, and also representatives from the development industry, national local government, professional services and voluntary organisations have signed up to it. At the moment, we are, as an authority, we are looking at becoming a signatory to the Charter, and this is something that will be taken through probably through Cabinet and maybe Council in due course. And that's about it from me on the planning update, so I'm quite happily take any questions on that.
Okay, thank you for that, Jonathan, with a comprehensive presentation. I can see that members have indicated they want to come in, so I will open it up now for questions. And the first question is from Councillor Pratt, please. Councillor Pratt.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation, very useful. You stated that there was 1,200 responses to the local development plan consultation. Is this on a par for average responses, or was it below or above for this particular consultation? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a lot more than we had in the last LDP. I can't remember exactly. I think that was around about 800 responses at this stage. So there is a lot more in comparison to the previous LDP. But this is only our second LDP, so it's very difficult to compare to other processes. But traditionally, my experience would suggest that there isn't an awful lot of response to key planning consultations, but in this case, I think that the message.
Is it just me, or have other colleagues found that
no, Chair, I've lost Jonathan as well, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Watts. Jonathan, can you hear us, Jonathan? You're frozen in time. Jonathan?
I do apologise. I was thrown out of the meeting for some reason. I think it's an IT glitch.
There was nothing you said, I'm sure. Okay, you're back in now, you, Jonathan?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Okay. Sorry, I'm not quite sure how far I got, but yeah, it's quite. We've had quite a big response compared to our previous LDP at the same stage in the process. So it's the message has definitely got out there, and I know our officers are still wading through the consultation responses now, and that's some weeks after it actually closed.
Yeah, a very large response, wasn't it, Jonathan, and very detailed response from many of the consultees, and that's where officers are still, and there's a lot more work to do, isn't there, in terms of analysing and assessing that that consultation response. Councillor Watts is next, please, then Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's not so much a question as just to indicate to members if they wish to see the placemaking policy put into practice, then they should look at the old St John's School site, where, and I have complimented Hayley Kemp, the planning officer, on this before, with the work that she put in there to reduce the number of houses from, I think it was 74 down to 57, and all the other aspects of that placemaking that went into that plan. And as I say, I think if members want to look at something as to how placemaking can be implemented and make it work, then please look at the St John's site. That's all I wish to say. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you, Councillor Watt. That's really helpful, actually, for people to be able to think and see a local example. And I'm sure we'll take that on board, won't we, Jonathan, in terms of future work on this. Is what does this mean in practice when it's off the drawing board, and what's it like out on site when it's been put into practice? So we'll think about that because people will need to see what these aspirations will mean to them, and please also convey our appreciation to Hayley for her work on that, because it's not often the planning officers get complimented, so I'm sure she'll appreciate that. It's a burden of the profession, isn't it, Jonathan? Okay, so Councillor Davis is next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank Jonathan for the presentation. Very good. Just one quick question, Chair. Does authority land have to be in the LDP? You know, like the old school sites you've got around the place, and another, you know, we've got quite extensive land holdings, I take it, throughout the authority. Do we put out add them to the LDP, you know, for in case we need to build or develop them in some way?
Yes. So all land is included in the local development plan, and as a local authority, as a landowner, we submitted a number of sites for consideration. And I'm sure Johnson can confirm that now. Johnson, please.
Yes, Leader. Yeah, all development sites, they have to be submitted. They have to go through that particular process and have to be justified. To get into the draft plan, there has to, you can't just put a line around a map and put it in. It's got to be fully justified and worked up and viable, and have all those criteria that I talked about earlier, and it links to the communities, active travel, education. So all got to stack up. So that includes council-owned sites, and we do have sites. Porthcawl is one of them. Porthcawl Regeneration Site is Park Avenue N is another one. So there are key large council-owned or sites where council have got a big interest in. So we got to go through the same process as any other developer in that respect.
Just really quickly, Chair. So if there's a couple of school sites in the Maesteg area which are currently vacant, the schools have been replaced with fantastic new ones we've had built. Of course, they're just sitting there now. A lot of them just empty, So will they have automatically gone on to this LDP, or how would that work now if a developer came along, in 2 years' time? Who would have put that onto the LDP then? It would be us, would it, or? I say us, I say the authority, I should say. Sorry.
Yeah, it's the smaller scale sites wouldn't be classed as strategic. So it's sites that are already within the settlement. There's no allocation there as such, but they will be covered under other policies in the LDP. So we would support the reuse of redundant buildings and redundant sites as a matter of course. So smaller sites wouldn't be classed as strategic. So we're talking strategic is something, but it could be up to 1,000 houses possibly.
Got you.
And but it would be covered, and the regeneration projects or within the settlement, so they would automatically come under that sort of category.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Cheers, thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor Davis. And it's likely, isn't it, Jonathan, a lot of those sites will have already been allocated. So I think, for example, Councillor Davis, of the former site of Maesteg Secondary School at Cloynderw, which was successfully redeveloped from a brownfield site to the T Cloynderw Extra Care development. So, for example, that site, because it's part of a larger site, will already have a site allocation, won't it, Jonathan? And I know that certainly where the local authority is the landowner, the property department is very diligent in ensuring that any sites that the department consider are developable are submitted. But I think it's also important to emphasise that the planning department is equally robust with the local authority as it is with any developer, and there's no difference in that in the bar that's set around whether or not sites can be developed or not, and then potentially the conditions and the context of that development. And again, as Jonathan has indicated, the local authority, the planning authority, will quite often impose quite strict conditions on the authority as a landowner and developer.
That's right. Yeah. So I could just add any sort of major development, anything over 10 houses. It's likely that would be submitted as a candidate site, and if it meets the criteria, it would make it an allocation, or because it's already within the settlement, it would be something that would be supported in principle. But you're quite right. The authority submitted a number of sites, and we had to sift through those and assess them against strict criteria, then on sustainability and connectivity and community proximity to the community, so they all went through that particular process before coming through into the draft plan.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Well, I can't see that any other members want to come in at this point. So, Councillor Baldwin, please.
And it's not a question in relation to this, but it's just to assure councillors that we have gone through a very vigorous process up until now, and as Jonathan has said, to over 1,200, closer to 1,300, I think we've had, and by far the biggest response we've had. And I know we've had 2 LDPs, but you know, it's still bigger than we've ever had. So we know that people have engaged with this process, and some people have been fearful that it excluded some people. But the way that we have done things in the past may have excluded people as well. We've tried to be as inclusive as possible. We've ensured that if any residents have concerns, then they were able to have one-to-one telephone conversations and discussions with our planning officers. All of the documents have been available at libraries for people to be able to go and view. And of course, people have embraced the new way of engaging through online consultation. So I just want to thank the staff for the vigorous process they've done already so far, but this is a long way off from being completed yet. We have to construct a report and we have to respond to those consultations as part of that report. So keep up the great work, Jonathan, and we'll see the report as soon as is practically possible. Thank you, Leader.
Thanks, Councillor Baldwin. I echo those thanks and appreciation to the staff, and perhaps just one final point then is it's a opportune moment to just remind colleagues or emphasise to colleagues that this process is very much determined by legislation, isn't it, Jonathan? This is a legal requirement. It's a statutory plan. It's will be very, very carefully considered by an inspector, by Welsh Government officials, and it is a plan that has been reported and considered. The process of determining the plan has been reported and considered and is ultimately a function of full council. And it is only because of full council support that we've reached the stage we've reached so far, and it will be for full council to continue to make decisions around the local development plan. I can see that Councillor McLagan would like to ask a question, please. I can see that your hand is raised, Councillor McLagan.
That's better. Okay.
I can hear you now. Fantastic.
Thank you for your report, and I was wondering if you have any idea as to the time frame when we may expect the inspector's report. You know, the report to the inspector, rather.
Yeah, well, at the moment, no is the short answer. First thing we have to do is to produce the consultation report and to look at the issues that are raised. Then we need to consider whether we have to change the plan, whether there's issues with the plan as it is, the deposit draft plan. Then we need to review the evidence base, because it's been going for a couple of years or 2 years or so. We need to look at that evidence base again and to see whether it's still valid. So that takes a period of time. And then we then have to get that consultation report approved, and then we need to go to Welsh Government with a revised delivery agreement. The delivery agreement is the timetable that we need to agree with Welsh Government to take it forward. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. For one, for example, is we've got to look at the inspector's workload and when they can program an examination in. So that's a big issue. So if there are a number of local authorities submitting LDPs at the same time, then we've got to get that programmed in. So there's a lot to do first. Now, we've been unfortunate because of the COVID outbreak. We've had to effectively delay our submission of the report. We should have been in that part of that process now. We should have been looking at getting the inquiry now, examination now, so that on the first 1st of January 2022, the plan hopefully is adopted, but obviously that has slipped. So we could be looking at least a further 6 month delay to take us into the middle of next year, but we don't know yet. So the next step is to ensure that we've covered off all the consultation responses, raised all the issues, fully summarised that, and then reported that back to members, and then we can move forward. So it's a little while off yet, but mindful that the current development plan will technically, it doesn't die, it doesn't expire as such, because it was adopted before that particular rule came in from Welsh Government. But the weight you can attach to that plan obviously reduces further beyond its expiry date that you go. So we are mindful that we can't delay the progress in the LDP for indefinitely, because our development plan won't be fit for purpose. Our current development plan won't be fit for purpose. But yeah, the timescales are going to stretch into next year. That's the short answer.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I've just got one. Thank you very much for that. But I've just one further question about the effects of COVID and, you know, the change in working practices, and whether there are more sort of national investigations as to how that might affect planning policy, and whether that is likely to play into the evidence base.
It's a good point to raise, actually, and Welsh Government has, through the pandemic, has been looking into the issue, and there have been alterations to planning policy over the course of the last year, and there are documents that Welsh Government published about the direction of travel, if you like, and these did go into the formulation of the national planning policy that came forward in February of this year. So some of the policies in there are as a direct result of COVID, of the COVID pandemic. So that's already found its way into planning policy, and that will then, by default, will find its way into local planning policy in the LDP. But there could be more coming from this. There could be more. We're still in relatively short period of time in planning terms with the pandemic. So there could be future planning policy coming forward in due course, and that means that our LDP is always under review, if you like. Every year we have to check to see if it's even once it's adopted, every year we've got to check to see if it's actually performing. So if there are issues, and we can see that there are maybe directly related to the pandemic or indirectly, then we may have to look at those policies again, and we may have to review that plan early. So it's a constant process of us checking and reviewing and to seeing whether it's actually delivering or not. And of course, there may be changes in national policy as a result as well, and we've got to take that into account. So yes, it's something that we would certainly be mindful of.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for that's really useful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question. I can't see that no problem. Thank you for that question. I can't see that anyone else wants to come in. Councillor McLagan, is that your hand re-raised?
No, sorry.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Okay. Well, thank you all for your attendance at this meeting. There's no other urgent items.
Chair, can I just say that JP Brundell has given his apologies.
You can indeed. Thank you for that, Councillor Granville. And you have also messaged me, and I have not given those apologies. I should have done. So apologies for not giving the apologies, but you've given them now. Thank you, Councillor Granville, and thank you, Jonathan, very much. And no doubt we will have you back at a future meeting because this is one of our most important plans as a local authority. And we're very keen to continue to work very closely with town and community councils on the development of that plan. So we'll certainly schedule a progress report on it in the future when those timescales are clearer. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. I look forward to seeing you at the next forum meeting. All the best. Take care.
Thanks,
Thank
Chair.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cheers, Chair.